Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. Got another completely different type of video for you today. For those of you who are only interested in guitar and, stringed instrument repair and building, sorry, you will not like this. Though this video will contain something that has a string, and that is a bow and arrow. I have been looking for some way to draw my young grandson into the shop here and get him a little bit more interested in doing things in the shop. His name is Isaac. And you'll see him in a minute in another part of the video. He's always been kind of standoffish from me, even though he just lives next door. He just really hasn't had much to do with me, and I thought I'd see if I could change that. I know he's interested in the outdoors, and he likes to do things, hunting, fishing, that type of thing with animals, etc. I have a background in archery, which many of you probably don't know. I was actually very good in archery in my young days. I believe I was the Missouri State champion intermediate level when I was 15 or 16, something like that. I shot with many world champions and Olympic archery champions. I can name tons of them. John Williams was a world champion, Hardy Ward, Daryl Dixon was a pro world champion, and Daryl Pace, I shot with him, Richard McKinney, Doug Brothers, on and on and on. I shot with Ann Weber Hoyt, Earl Hoyt Jr. and Earl Hoyt Sr., who they called Pop. I shot in tournaments with all these people. I went to the Archery Hall of Fame down in Springfield, Missouri recently, and it was just like old home week for me because all the names that were in there pretty much I knew, or at least the ones in the more modern times, that is. From the late 60s on, let's say it that way. I thought before we get into the actual building of this bow and arrow, I thought I would tell you just a little bit more about my history in archery. I started shooting on my own when I was about 14 or something like that, 13, 14 years old, and I just got a cheap little bow. I believe I got it from a store called Zayre's, which I don't think is even in existence anymore. Very similar to a Kmart. Just bought a little cheapy bow and got pretty good with it. I could hit pretty much what I was aiming at. One of the coaches from the local high school knew my dad through horses, and he saw me shooting, and he said, well, when you get into high school there, you should sign up for the archery programs. They teach, they have archery in school. Well, that kind of got me even a little bit more excited. And I started actually going to an archery range locally, and I learned a lot about archery just at a local archery range. And I got better and better, and the people at the archery range thought I was pretty good, and they kept encouraging me, and then they, got my parents to buy a better bow, and etc. and so forth. And that's how I became the Missouri State archery champion at a very young age. I went to national competitions, one at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, I believe it was. And in that particular tournament, I think I was 15 or 16, I don't remember. And I placed well. I didn't win or anything, but I was the only person in the intermediate level that got what they call a 6 gold at 60 yards. And that's 6 out of 6 arrows in the gold at 60 yards. Well, that's a pretty decent feat for a person that young back then. It's almost like nothing anymore with the compounds and all that kind of stuff. But you have to remember that we were shooting stick bows. We were shooting with no sights, no peep sights on the strings. It had to be a bare string. We were using Olympic competition rules. And we could have weights and stabilizers on the bow, and we could have an extended sight, but we could only have one pin, and you had to move the pin for your yardages. So it was a lot more complicated than, using a compound with all kinds of pins and things that they use these days. And releases. You could not use a release. You had to use fingers. So, getting 6 out of 6 arrows back in those days into the bullseye was a little more complicated than it would be today. The Olympic archery rules have changed now. I think they only shoot 3 arrows at a time. Back then, we shot 6 at a time. That's a lot more trying on your muscles to shoot 6 in a row. They shoot 3 at a time now, and I think they shoot at 70 meters, which is further than 60 yards, of course, but it's not as far as we used to shoot back then. We used to shoot what they called the feeder round, and we shot at 90 meters, which is roughly 3 feet short of 100 yards, or 3 feet short of a football field. And you're shooting at a 9-inch bullseye. And back then, if you weren't pretty close to the bullseye or in the bullseye quite often, you just weren't in the competition. And I definitely was in the competition with those folks. Even though I was shooting against world champions and things, they kind of knew who I was. I didn't really threaten them too terribly bad at that time. I probably would have made it to the Olympics, but it were not for one of my coaches, who at high school made me jump on a trampoline that I said, "Coach, I've never jumped on a trampoline. I don't really want to jump on it. I'm afraid I'll get hurt. I've got this archery championship coming up for the qualifier for the Olympics." He says, "If you don't jump on the trampoline, you're getting an F in the class." I swear to you, as God is my witness, the first thing I ever did on a trampoline in my life tore this shoulder completely out all the way. As a matter of fact, I bet you can even see the hump in my shoulder here right now. It never healed. It just ruined my archery career. One jump on a trampoline. I swear to you, that's what happened, is the truth. I couldn't raise this hand above my waist for almost 6 months. It tore the shoulder out that bad. And that kind of ruined my archery career. Had I known then what I know now, I probably would have sued him because it really did make a mess. You know, I stayed in archery even though after that healed, but I just couldn't compete at the same level. I was pretty good though. I was still pretty darn good. They knew who I was. So then if you fast forward from around age 20-ish or something to around age 35-ish, I hadn't shot in a single competition during all those years. But yet my one friend who I worked with at Bell was dying of cancer. His name was Gary McGee. And Gary had a dying wish, and that truly is what it was. He said, "Before I die, I'd like to see you shoot in an archery competition." That's not the kind of thing you can refuse, so I said, "Well, yeah, I'll do that." So he had this already set up, and he pulls out a newspaper and hands it to me, and he says, "Well, there's a competition this Saturday at Jefferson Barracks, it's kind of in south area of the St. Louis area. It's a big military cemetery, basically, is what it is. But they have archery shoots there they have a wooded area and stuff. And so this happened to be a different kind of tournament than I normally shot in. Now, don't get me wrong, I had shot in this kind of tournament before, but it wasn't the serious tournaments that I considered serious, which was the Olympic archery competitions. But I had done well in these hunting shoots back in my younger days, and I said, "Yeah, okay, we'll do that." Keep in mind, I really honestly hadn't even shot a bow very much in that 15-year period there. And I definitely had not shot in a single competition. So we pull up to Jefferson Barracks that Saturday, and would you not know, the place was packed. It was a huge archery tournament. There were over 300 shooters there that day. And I thought, "Whoa, Gary," I said, "what'd you get me into, man?" I said, "We didn't have this many competitors back when I was shooting." The bottom line is, I shot in the tournament, and I was doing really well. This kind of hunting tournament is sometimes they call it a 3D shoot. They call it all kinds of different things. And some people even called it a field shoot, but field archery was actually different. But anyway, you're walking down trails through the woods, and you have silhouettes sometimes, or sometimes actual 3D targets, and sometimes they actually move on pulleys. Well, I was pretty much nailing everything. I really was. I was shooting as good as probably I'd ever shot, really. And I was, pretty much hitting everything right in the heart or in the dead center, wherever it needed to be, And he was very impressed. He was really getting excited about it. Even the moving targets, I hit pretty much every single one of them and pretty much killed them. I'd only missed a couple of targets up to about the midway point, 1 or 2 targets. And when I say missed, that means like I didn't hit the kill. I hit maybe the kill might have been 15 points and the wound area would be 10 points or whatever. So, I'd only maybe hit the 10 points a couple of times. Otherwise, I was pretty much in the kill that day. Well, then we come up to a big line, and all these archers are standing in line, and we're about halfway through the tournament at this point. I'm thinking, what's going on here? Well, it turned out they had a target that was way down through the woods. I mean, like a long way down through the woods. And there was trees all around, you know, and so your arrow's arching way down through this path. And the target looks like a little dot down there pretty much. And it was a silhouette of a deer. Actually, it was a 3D deer, turned sideways. And people were shooting, and it was taking them a long time to judge the distance. So you don't know what the distances are on any of these targets. You're just having to guess. That's what really makes it very hard. And so people are shooting and missing, and almost nobody's even hitting the target at all. I mean, like almost every single person is missing the whole target, let alone, hitting it in the kill or even the wound area. I would say up to the point we watched it and probably watched 30 or 40 people shoot at it, we only saw 2 or 3 people actually even hit the silhouette at all. So when it came my turn to get up there, I had prejudged the target at 80 yards. That's just was my best guess. I had no idea for sure. Well, guess what? I only had a 20, 30, 40, and 50 yard pin. So if you think about it from 20 to 50, that's 30 yards. Well, that 30 yards plus the 50 yard itself, that gives you 80 yards if you know how to work the system. So what I did was I put my 20 yard pin on the heart of that deer at 80 yards away, and I looked and saw where my 50 yard pin was at, and I could see it was on a little white bright leaf. So I raised my 20 yard pin up to that little white bright leaf, let it go, and it boom, hit him right in the heart. Killed it deader than a doornail. And, everybody was almost cheering. It was pretty amazing because I really was about the first person to hit it like that. So, and when we got up to the target, there were no other holes there. So, I was pretty much the first guy to hit it there in the heart. So anyway, we went ahead and finished the rest of the tournament, and it worked out really good. Well, when it came time to tally the scores, I was third. There was 2 people that actually shot better than me out of 300 and some archers. And so Gary was incredibly impressed. He really was. He was very, very impressed because he knew I hadn't shot in any tournaments in a long time. While we were standing there waiting to get my 3rd place trophy and a quiver, actually I won a leather quiver as part of the trophy. While we were standing there, a man walks up to us, and Gary got to hear this, by the way, and the man says to me, you do know you got cheated, don't you? And I said, what do you mean? He says, you know the 2 guys that got 1st and 2nd? And I said, well, I don't know them, but I know, who you're talking about. And he says, well, guess what? They're the 2 guys that set up the course. I said, really? They were allowed to shoot in it? Because generally, you're not allowed to shoot in a tournament if you set up the course because you know all the yardages. Well, they knew all of the yardages. So, that's a big advantage to have. So had they not been in the tournament, I would have gotten 1st place. And, that's kind of the story of my life. It's kind of the way the cookie always crumbles. But, whatever. It worked out wonderful for me, and Gary got to see me shoot, and he was incredibly happy that day. And he died shortly thereafter. It probably wasn't much more than a month later he died. So I was very happy to have shown him a good day. Well, that's my archery stories. I want to show you here that I'm no stranger to making bows. I haven't made very many, to be perfectly honest with you. I think this is only maybe my 3rd one I ever made. But this one, I just made it as a little hunting bow. And you can see it's a fairly high quality bow. Nothing super, super special, but just a nice little bow. It's a recurve. It's got fiberglass limbs. I don't know if you can see through the fiberglass there, but if I can get the camera to focus, but you might be able to tell that that's actually a sycamore limb under the fiberglass. So this, again, like I make sycamore mandolins, this is sycamore limbs, and I cut it from the same tree as I make my mandolins, believe it or not. So I thought you might find that interesting. I also made the bowstring. I used to make bowstrings all the time. I made my own bowstrings because the ones I could make were better than the ones I could buy. I also made a lot of other paraphernalia. I made this quiver and carved the design into it. I used to do a lot of leather work years ago. And these are called flu arrows. These are for shooting flying targets. In other words, if you throw a clay bird in the air, you can shoot it out of the air with this. I can't tell you I can hit every clay bird. I can't. But I can hit occasionally. I can hit a clay bird with a bow and arrow, which, try that with a shotgun even. It's not that easy to do. But I can do it with a bow and arrow occasionally. Now, I say I can. It's been 35 years since I've really shot anything, much. Because like I said, I was 35 when I shot in that last tournament. That's the last tournament I ever shot in. Haven't shot in another one since, even though I was very competitive even at that age. So I hope you'll enjoy my little build with my grandson. We're going to make just a little quick and dirty bow. This is nothing like you would normally make a high-end bow. And I'm not necessarily calling this a high-end bow, but this is a pretty decent bow. We're not going to try to make anything like this kind of level or anything. This is just going to be, let him learn how to use some tools. We're just going to let him whittle on the thing, and we'll just see how it turns out. I don't expect any kind of miracles or anything, but I think you'll learn something about bow making if you watch this. Thank you for watching up to this point. The next thing you see will be me introducing my grandson. Well, friends, this is my number 6 grandchild. His name is Isaac. So Isaac is the second oldest boy, but in terms of order of grandchildren, he's number 6. We are going to attempt to make a bow and arrow. We're not going to make a real high-end bow and arrow at this point. We're just going to try to make something that's functional, that works. And I went in the barn this morning and I found this piece of red cedar. Now, red cedar would not normally be your first choice for making a bow, but it's got a couple of advantages. Number one, it is actually fairly flexible, and number two, it's softer and it'll be a little easier for Isaac to work, being that this will be his first attempt at making a bow. So he can learn a lot about making a bow with this kind of wood, and we'll just see what turns out. You just never do know. It might surprise us both. Okay, we're going to cut this board off. This end here has a lot of white wood in it, and we're going to cut the white off, and then we'll still have enough length here, I think, to make our bow. So Isaac's going to do the job here. Hold your hand right here, Isaac. Hold this down. Now the blade's coming through here, so you don't ever want to get your hand in this area. You're going to squeeze this trigger here, and you're going to pull this down. It's going to make a lot of noise. Now, just wait till I tell you. All right, I'm going to turn on the vacuum system first. Here we go. All right, now you grab a hold of that. Squeeze the trigger. Isaac is 58 inches tall, so we're going to make a bow that's 58 inches tall as well. And I've got it marked here. Okay, it's exactly the same thing, Isaac. I think that was Isaac's first time he ever operated a saw like that. So is that true, Isaac?
Yeah.
Cool. Did a good job. Okay, Isaac has never used a table saw before either, and I've given him instructions off camera here of what we're going to do, and of course I'll be supervising the whole thing and watching to make sure he doesn't get his hands in area or anything. And we have a push stick that we're going to use when we get close enough. I'll be up in this area and be able to assist if there's any problem. Well, I think that went really well. We got a nice piece. We cut this at 1 3/4 inches wide, which would be about the width of the limbs. And I don't see any real flaws in this wood, so I think we're going to have a nice cedar bow here. And Isaac did a good job feeding it through there, and all is well. So we'll move on to the next step. Isaac has never done this before either, but we're going to sand off the roughness off of both sides of this limb here. And he's going to feed it through right now. Go ahead and feed it through. It's still got a little bit of roughness to it, but I think that's good enough for our purposes at the moment, and we're going to work some of it down by hand anyway, so I think this will be fine. Now it's time for us to lay out the handle, and I'll do most of this layout work, and Isaac can watch what we're doing here. First of all, we're just going to find the center, and it is 58 inches, so half of 58 is how much? You don't know? How about 29? It's the weekend. What's the weekend got to do with it?
Since we don't have to do any math.
You don't have to do any math on the weekend. Okay, all right. I get it. Okay, so yeah, and then if you measure the other way, it still measures 29. So that must mean we were exactly in half. Okay, so here's the halfway point, and we'll just use a square to get us a straight line across there. Okay, so now we're going to make a right-handed bow. So we're going to say that this is the handle area here. This will be the handle area. And we're going to want a little arrow shelf. And so let's say that this will be the arrow shelf in here. I'm not sure just how big of a shelf that we need. Let me just measure my other bow to see how big we made that one. Okay, so I think we're going to make about a 3/4 of an inch arrow shelf here. And so this area here we'll get rid of this. And what we need to do then is just kind of come up, you know, roughly like this, and then just curve it off. It doesn't really matter too much how we do that. It's just any freehand shape that you want to make. That's what we're doing here. Making a little bit of a handle here. I'm not exactly sure how we'll do that either. We're just going to kind of curve something in here. Let's just use that as our curve, and we'll call that our handle. That might be a little bit much. This is just by eye, just what looks good. I want to come back down here pretty far. Let me hold this up here and kind of look at it and see what I think. I think that'll probably be fine. Okay, and then what we want to do is come about halfway between this, and just roughly, it doesn't have to be perfect. So half of 29 would be 14.5. So about right here, we'll draw another line across. And what we'll do is we'll taper from here down to the center. Let's find the center on this piece here. 1 3/4, so half of that would be, let's see, 7/8 I think is half of that. So right there is about 7/8. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We'll mark it both ways that way. Okay, and then so let's leave the tip up here. Oh, let's leave the tip 3/4 of an inch wide. So this would be 3/8 off of each side of that center. So we'll go here, 3/8 here. So now we just draw a straight line between, this is not a very good ruler. Let's use this one. This would be better. So we got a straight line there and a straight line here. That looks pretty good. That's not too bad. And again, we'll go 14.5 inches off of this. We'll find the center of this, which is about right here. Double check that. And then we'll go 3/8 of an inch off of each side of that. Okay. And draw this down like so. So now we've got a rough shaped bow, and we'll go to the saw now and we'll cut these lines out. We're at the bandsaw now, and Isaac has of course never used a bandsaw either. I'm going to show him how to make the first cut and how to stay on which side of the line and that sort of thing. So I'm going to demonstrate one cut first, and then I'm going to let him make the rest of the cuts. At least that's the plan. Isaac is going to cut out the sight window here, or the arrow shelf window. We're just going to cut down to this line. See this line here? We're going to cut this line and stop right there. Okay? And that's all we're going to do. And then we'll just be real still, and we'll shut the machine off. We'll take the blade back out, and then we'll cut across this way. Okay? On second thought, I'll just go ahead and cut that first. Let's just do that. Let's cut this first window first. But the problem is that this is in our way here, and so I'm going to have to, this is not going to cut straight, so I'm going to make this cut for him because it's going to be kind of tricky. Okay, we have a rough shape of a bow. This might have got a little thin here, but I don't think so. We're going to beef this handle up anyway, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. Now we're going to start thinking about beefing up the handle and shaping the limbs and things like that. Well, actually, we still have some shaping to do right here, I think. I don't know if I want to beef it up first and then cut that out, or cut this out and then beef it up. It doesn't make too much difference. I think we'll leave this here until we beef it up, and then we'll cut this out. We got a rough piece of that same cedar, and we're gonna have Isaac cut this straight line down through here. So we'll get this set here, okay? We've got the handle roughed out. Now what we want to do is we want to cut, kind of make this blend down into this part. So we're going to cut out a piece here. This is just, just however you want to do it, really. It's not like it has to be any particular way, but we're basically going to be cutting something like that and something like that on here too, roughly about like that. Doesn't have to be perfect exactly. Let me just get a better line though so that you'll have an idea. We don't want to cut this.
Yeah.
We don't want to cut that. We just want to cut from about here to about like that, something like that, kind of in a straight line. So let's go over to the bandsaw and cut that. All right, well then let's just kind of pull this in like so, and then out like so. So we just want to kind of come in, maybe like that. And then kind of the same way here, kind of like that. A little different on this side than this side, but not much, okay? So you're going to want to cut this. All right, so you just kind of bring it in here like so, and just kind of cut, and then you're going to have to bring it around like this. So you'll have to let it have it where it'll swing, and then you're going to come back out like that, okay? That's how the cut's going to look. It's going to go like that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, go ahead and start carving. Let me show you how I would do it and get one side done. I'll get this side done, and then you do this side. Grandpa helped him a little bit and knocked out some more of it, and then now he's using the smoothing file to smooth out what I did. I think we can take it over to a sander now and work on the sander some and show you how to use that. I wanted you to learn how to use hand tools before we mess with the sander much, and I think you're kind of getting the idea there, but it takes quite a bit of work by hand like that. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is lay out from the tip back to here and taper the inside, the belly side of the limb. And we're just going to kind of do it by eye. I've marked off 3/8 of an inch. We're going to leave a good strong 3/8 of an inch, and then we'll just draw a straight line. And this is all just by guess. I don't really have I don't know for sure that this is a good way to do this. Never used cedar before, so it's just a guess. Okay, so there's that line. So this is the waist side back here. This is the waist. This is no good over here. That's what we're getting rid of. So this is the good side. So which side of the line you stay on? You stay on this side of the line. The waist side, right. And the same way here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw a line here. First off, we need to measure 3/8 of an inch from this side here. So there's 1, 2, 3/8. So right about there. And then we'll just mark it down to where the handle starts there. Just draw a line. Hold that down for me. Just hold it. So that's all waist. We're going to cut all that off. That'll make the limbs bend easier, see? Because they're too stiff right now. We're really kind of up against it with this kind of wood. It's a very brittle, stiff wood, and I can tell that after we cut that away, it's still going to be way too stiff. I thought maybe we'd start to see some flex. I think what I'm going to do is just take a risk and set up a fence and just go ahead and run this thing through to about right in here, and then we'll just cut it back out to the handle. And I think we're just going to cut it down to about 3/8 of an inch thick all the way, and we'll do that to both sides and just see how that does on the flex, and then we'll go from there. Well, that's definitely going to give it some flex now. We can start to see the limbs are starting to flex a little bit. I think we're going to have to do a good backing on this, or it'll just break. So we're going to have to find some backing material that we can put on this, and it may not be your standard backing material. That's okay. We're just flying and learning right now. That's all we're really doing. We're not going to create the best bow ever made. We're just going to see if we can get something that'll shoot. Well, I'm helping him quite a bit on this because this is obviously the real important part of the limb. We still got quite a bit of work to do in this area because it's not a smooth transition. We want to have this a real nice smooth transition, and same way on this side. And once we get that, then we'll see where we're at in terms of tillering and that kind of thing. The bow is turning out pretty decently. It's got some pretty good flex in it now. I don't know if you can see it flexing or not in the camera there, but it flexes pretty good. But we know if we would flex it too much, this kind of wood would break, no question. So you need to back it with something. You know, traditionally they use sinew, and that's about as good as it gets, or bamboo would be really good. I've seen a fella on YouTube using just this flexible fiberglass drywall tape, and he puts on like 4 or 5 coats and with glue, and it seems to work. So that's what we're going to use because we're cheap, and we're going to try it and see if it works. We're going to see what that does tomorrow. Well, Isaac's back in the shop today. This thing has been sitting and drying for over a week. I got busy with things, and I got sick, and I think he did too, and so we just couldn't get back to it. But you can see that the fiberglass backing that we put on this is now dry, and it seems to have bonded pretty well. You know, I don't know if this is going to work, and you know, it's just an experiment, and we're just learning and playing more than anything. It's not like a big deal if it don't work. We're going to now, though, trim the yellow off down to the edges of the wood. And so that's what we're doing in our next step. We think we've got the bow up in decent shape where we're just about ready to start the final tillering and stringing. And what we need to do, though, is get some notches cut where we can put a string. I don't know exactly about this. I'm just doing this arbitrarily. I'm going to come down, about 5/8 of an inch. I think is about where I'm going to go here. So right about there, we'll cut a string groove across, and then the string groove has to angle back like so, and has to angle back like so, something like that. And then it even has to cut through like this, cut through like so. Okay? And then we'll do the same. We'll mark the other end, and we'll mark it at about 5/8 of an inch also. And then again, we've got to come something like so and something like so. And that's just kind of a guess, and we'll see about that next. And then you get your hands on there and just go ahead and try that a little bit. Just keep it straight. Yeah, straight across like that. Turn it a little bit like that. All right, that might be deep enough. Now we're going to figure out the angle here.
So we're trying to approximate this angle and get it right, and to be honest, I've never used this before, and it's, oh, I see, it's not locking down because of that. I had never used that tool. I got it not too long ago, and I just never did really use it yet. And so we're locking down the angle here. Pretty much the angle I had there is just about what I want, but I just wanted to pencil it in, get it a little straighter, and hopefully, I can only do one side the way this thing is made at a time. It's only got a ledge on one side, so I think that's gonna get us where we want to be, pretty close anyway. So now I'm just going to try to follow this. I think that this will work. By using a rat tail file like this, you actually make the back of the groove bigger, which is where you need it because the string will flex in that groove. And then the front stays small like you want. The way I think I'll do this one is just transfer it across. This part here is one of the most critical parts of making your bow. Now we got to cut the grooves the opposite way.
Well, friends, it's been several weeks since we worked on Issac's bow, and we just got back together to maybe make a bowstring. As a matter of fact, this jig that I have sitting up here is a bowstring jig for making bowstrings. I haven't used that in several years, but we just happened to find a basically fairly new bowstring in some of my old supplies as we were looking for all the components to make a string. When I say fairly new, it's good enough for this bow. This bow is not going to be very strong. You can see the bracing height at the moment is a little low. Generally speaking, from where your handle fits there, it generally is about the length of your fist and thumb. Keep in mind, mine are a little longer than average, so a little bit more here. If we had it about here, we'd probably have the proper bracing height. I just twisted the string to shorten the string quite a bit. One thing is the tillering, and this limb is appearing to bend more than this limb is, and so we're going to take a little more off. Now, the problem is the bow's already pretty weak. It's only 15 pounds at 20 inches right now, and that's okay because he's learning, and a weak bow is actually easier to learn on and to get good form and all that, so it's really good to have a weak bow to get your form set and all that. And then once you learn all the proper techniques for shooting and everything, then you move up in your poundage a little bit. But right now this is going to be good to learn on. I think we do need to tiller it a little bit because that limb is certainly bending more than this one, so we're going to work on that first. I think the most efficient way for me to do this is to use my thickness sander to get this down a little bit. It's pretty good most of the way, and then it gets a little thicker right in here. And I think if we take it off right in here, this would be the place where it'll help it bend the better. So anyway, we're going to try that. I'm going to do the feeding through here on this because this could be a little dangerous because it could kick it back. So I'll handle that. Turn on the dust collection. That worked pretty well, and you can see it left kind of a hump right in here, and I think I'm just going to plane this hump out, and I'm just going to assume that we're going to be real close there. We may not be. May have gone the other direction for all I know, but we're going to test the tillering here in just a moment. Okay, I know you won't be able to see this, but we're going to test the poundage and we're going to test the draw length. We've also raised the bracing height a little bit more. It's still probably not as high as I would like to see it, but we're getting closer. The tillering is better now. It's not absolutely perfect, but it's better by just taking it through the thickness sander there a little bit. But we know we're not very strong. It just so happens that this fish scale has a tape measure on it, and it's just perfect for this kind of work. We can put this on the front of the bow, and we can, whoops, except that it's sliding off. I should have a knock on there just to keep it from sliding. Off camera, this didn't happen. It only happens on camera. Yeah. But anyway, now we're pulling it down, and we're at 10 pounds right there. We're not going to be very strong, but we're getting there. And we're at, there's 19 inches. There's 20. you see, you have to go by your string there, dude. So there's 20 right there, and we're almost to 15 pounds. There's 22 inches. I think his draw length is probably going to be somewhere around 24 inches. That's my guess. And we're 23 inches there, and that's 15 pounds. So a 15-pound bow is not too bad for a first effort and one to learn on. So there's 24 inches, and we're about 16, 17 pounds. So, and it didn't crack. I didn't hear anything cracking.
Yeah.
It seems like it's working perfectly. Can't hardly fault anything. It's gonna launch an arrow. Maybe not the best, but it's not too bad. It stacks when you get back here. It starts to stack. And if you know anything about bows, what that means is it gets harder all of a sudden. Like it draws pretty smooth, and all of a sudden about here it starts to stack. It gets pretty heavy. But that's about all the further he's going to have to draw it anyway, I think. Although his arms are pretty long. Approximate where your fingers go, right about here. Okay, and 3 fingers, put those 3 fingers. Now, do not let go of this, even, you let it down, okay, when you're done. All right, hold this arm out level, put this elbow up high. When you draw back, I want to see, and hold under the string good, and I want to see you draw back and come back to about where your cheek is here, about like this. All right, go ahead and draw, right there, that's good. And you hold it there. That's real good form. This arm here, your elbow's turned out a little bit this way. You could turn it this way, see? You can learn how to do that. You can turn this elbow this way and this wrist this way, believe it or not, and that'll keep you from hitting your elbow. It's a little awkward feeling at first. I'm going to demonstrate to these guys on camera here. Again, I used to teach archery, so this is something I was used to teaching. But you see, your arm can turn down this way as you're holding the bow. It can turn down this way, or it can turn up. See, like this. Now my elbow is pointed up, or you can turn it down, see, like that. And that's the way you want to shoot. And it gives you a lot more string clearance. And I think it's time to fling an arrow with this thing. What do you guys think? Okay, Isaac's all set up for his very first shot. We promise you he has not shot the bow yet. We did not shoot it off camera at all. This is the very, very first shot. Go ahead and do like I showed you. I did give him some pointers on form. There you go. On camera, that's what happens. Okay, so this is Isaac's very first attempt. Little bit high, but hey, it shot pretty good though. Now those arrows are way too heavy for this bow. Those arrows are for my, like 45-pound hunting bow, and so this bow's a little bit underpowered for those arrows. But that wasn't bad. That was a pretty good shot. Why don't you stand up there and do another shot? You want to take the finger tab off? Tab. He's not used to using a finger tab. I was trying to show him that. Okay. All right. Yeah. Go ahead and this is shot number 2. Down a little bit. Down a little bit, down, right about there. No, you're going up again. Right about there. Not bad, just a little to the right. Make sure you got the right feather turned out. The white feather goes out, up. Yeah, like that. You put the white feather like that. Under the knock. There you go.
So with crossbows, the white feather goes down.
Well, yeah, on a crossbow, the white feather does go down. You're right. Okay. It's pretty good. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. A little bit to your right. So now you need to compensate and aim a little bit to your left there. The height-wise looks pretty good though. All right, Isaac and I went out and we test shot the bow, as you saw. And now we are going to put some linseed oil on it to protect it. Look how much nicer it looks now. It really looks
shiny.
See that's the before, and there's the after. So that's what she looks like after the linseed oil. There's a few little light spots where we got glue on it when we were putting on this yellow stuff, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. But that linseed oil will make it last a long, long time. So I hope you enjoyed this bow build with Isaac. We thoroughly enjoyed working together on this. Isaac learned a lot of things, and he's learning some new techniques for shooting. What do you think about your bow, Isaac?
I love it.
You love it? Well, that's good enough for me. If he loves it, I'm tickled to death. Thanks for watching, folks.